Bitter criticism. This time, June 7. June 7, I have some news, some strange, some few news actually, because I was taking I was making my file here, my dossier. It's like a dossier or clipping. It's like a clipping. It's a huge clipping. So, and I couldn't take news from. I only take news from Russia Today, but it's nice because it's the most important actually. Russia, Palestine, and Brics, three revolutionary forces changing the world. Well, this I just read this. I'm not sure if there's something new in this very article. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna read it again, I guess. How can the global majority dethrone the American empire? This question was at the center of an elite roundtable discussion between Russian lawmakers and a delegation of foreign intellectuals on the sidelines of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Here are the main points from that discussion. Multipolarity is necessary since American hegemony fuels global problems instead of solving them by provoking wars and color revolutions. Russia is a revolutionary power and at the forefront of history. The Ukraine conflict is helping break down all unipolar world order, unipolar world order, and replace it with a more just and equitable system. Russia's willingness to defy the West is supported by a majority of the world. Palestine is the litmus test for challenging US imperialism in the Middle East. The conflict has eroded American influence in the Middle East by weakening its main ally in the region, Israel. Palestinian cause is gaining growing support from global South. Yeah, I just read this yesterday. I hope the best for Brics, despite I'm not in Brazil anymore. I'm just in Chile, I have a Pepe Escobar article from the Cradle, I guess. I don't remember, but supporting genocide to halt multipolarity, a new word for me. I'm gonna print it to study later. And well, it goes like this. The hegemon is calculating for a world war to halt multipolarity. It supports Israel. It supports Israel's Gaza genocide as a necessary evil to win hard. In West Asia, figuring who's going to care once the war goes global. I didn't got the sentence, but something like what is going to happen next the war. And here we have Pepe Escobar. Pepe Escobar, June 5th, 2024. Photocredit the Cradle. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum (SPIEF) takes place this week. It's one of the go-to annual meetings across Eurasia. The overall theme in 2024 is multipolarity. Quite fitting considering this is the year of the Russian presidency of Brics. The Brics summit next October in Kazan will be crucial. Sometime I will buy the kuchu fly. I know the kuchu fly, is nice, it's tasty, but I don't know. It's for a foreign will be nice. It's like is sweet milk. Is how to say? It's like a cookie. A cylindrical cookie. Anyway. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum (SPIEF) takes place this week. I just read that Kazan, Russian presidency of Brics. The Brics summit next October in Kazan will be crucial in drawing the contours of the roadmap towards multipolarity going forward. There's the rub, taking us to arguably the key question facing the global majority. How can we afford to dream about multipolarity when we are plunged into the unthinkable, reduced to the role of mere spectators, watching a genocide broadcast 24/7 on every smartphone on the planet? The avowedly imperfect International Court of Justice (ICJ) at least ordered the biblical genocidals to stop bombing Rafah. Israel response: they bombed Rafah. Worse, they burned children alive in refugee tents with American missiles. And the genocide will continue at least until the end of this multipolar year. As boasted by Israeli intel, the global majority at least clearly sees how the rules-based international order works. Yet that's not much of a comfort. The ICJ ordered to stop carnage in Rafah, plus the ICC drive to seek warrants for the arrest of top Israeli leaders for serial war crimes in Gaza. Predictably, send the Israeli U.S. joined at the hip combo into a hysterical frenzy. The heart of the matter concerns the real masters and managers of the empire of chaos and plunder, much more than their lowly emissaries. The masters cannot allow any institution to loosen their grip on the official narrative. The official narrative is there's no genocide in Gaza, and no red lines have been trespassed. This is the official diktat of the collective West. No breaches are allowed. They will go to unconstitutional extremes to enforce total narrative control with an ironclad public relations operation to envelop the whole planet in layer after after layer of propaganda stupor. Slightly contradicting Mao Zedong, real power does not come from the barrel of a gun or from a hypersonic nuclear missile. It comes from narrative control, or what we used to call soft power. Really, soft power. The difference now is that the hegemon does not control soft power anymore. The global majority is perfecting in real time its own soft power counter punches. I will say that what controls the world, I'm not sure about. Maybe soft power, who knows. Yeah, I hope so. It's soft power. I mean, boycott, such a nice guy, isn't it? Funny. A systematically sociopathic society. The narrative controllers might still be able to obliterate key facts from Western public opinion, for instance, or on ethnic cleansing. Christian Arabs have been systematically ethnic cleansed in Palestine. In the early 1950s, Bethlehem was 86% Christian, a figure that has since plummeted to a dismal 12%. Today, the biblical psychopaths build a wall around Bethlehem, annexed land for the benefit of armed Jewish settlers and ethnically cleansed Christians. Serious studies on hyperethnocentrism or the systematically sociopathic character of Israeli society do not offer much solace when it comes to stopping a genocide, because the wound is much deeper. Alastair Crook, a former diplomat with vast on-the-ground experience, is peerless among Westerners when it comes to understanding the intricacies of West Asia. In his columns and podcasts, he touches on the major wound laid bare by the war genocide in Gaza, the schism at the heart of the West between an illiberal social engineering project posing as liberalism and a project of recover the eternal values, however imperfect, that once lay behind European civilization. Adding to the problem, the US-Israel power structures are joined at the hip, and they work under a sort of complementary logic. While Israel's version of plunder is embodied in settler colonialism, the hegemon, as brilliantly explained by Michael Hudson, has been on an orgy of rent-seeking financialized colonialism since the end of World War II, and what Michael Hudson qualifies as the fire, finance, insurance, real estate racket was calcified as Alastair's notes into a permanent framework to the Western political and geopolitical system. Thus, it's no wonder that the global majority, instinctively sees the Israel-US combo bearing different forms of exploitation plunder all the way to genocide as the epitome of colonialism, now softened by a narrative control up into a meaningless rules-based international order. It's also no wonder that the Gaza genocide has sparked a renewed global, majority-wide anti-colonial wave. Still, that's not enough. No one is actually stopping the genocide. That will only be practically possible by inflicting a devastating military defeat on Israel, with the victors dictating the terms of capitulation. That's not feasible, at least not yet, and contributes to the biblical psychopaths believing they can get away with anything. A New Horizon on Human Sacrifice. Andrea Sock is a professor of ethical philosophy at the University of Milan and one of the foremost independent Italian intellectuals. Sock takes us further into the appropriately tragic dead end now contemplated by the collective West. The West, under the hegemon, he says, only ever had a plan A. There was no plan B. That implies the West will continue to apply all forms of divide and rule against the major Eurasian powers, Russia, China, and Iran. Sock notes correctly that India is substantially under control. That's the crossroads scenario we are in right now. Looking ahead, it's either an open hot war or an array of hybrid wars between major powers and their vassals. Essentially, the Third World War. Shock shows how the West, under the hegemon, is now obsessed with creating systemic wounds capable of cyclical destruction. To open these wounds, there are two main procedures: war and pandemics. He argues that only a new horizon of human sacrifice is capable of allowing the West's ultimate truth to continue standing on its clay feet. In fact, it is this new horizon of human sacrifice that is conditioning the West's non-response, or worse, legitimization of the Gaza genocide. And that is inexorably corroding the European psyche from the inside. What used to be called European civilization, now completely vassalized by the hegemon, may not ever be cured of the cancer. In these trials and tribulations, we are not enough. Irrational messengers under orders are busy bringing us closer day after day to a nuclear war, and some lowly functionaries even admitted point blank. It's all here in a conversation between Judge Andrew Napolitano and analysts Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern, during which the former refers to an email he received from a military intel source. This is what the source told him. Quote, "Today I listened to an extensive interview with an IDF ex-intelligence officer. His position was clear. We are, he said, aiming towards a world war. Italics mine. Israel therefore should stop itself from implementing some of the most radical measures, because its actions will be measured retroactively in the context of the brutal world conflict to come. This should be seen as the ultimate explanation for the hegemon vassals' non-stop frantic escalation in the intertwined forever wars front, from Gaza to Novorossiya. That includes genocide and genocide spin-offs, such as the $320 million aid peer scam, now turned into junk on the Gaza shore, bringing it all back to genocide all over again, as the breadcrumb ploy of expelling shipping Palestinians abroad has miserably failed. Aiming towards a world war makes it also clear who's really running the show, and the whole multipolar world is still being held hostage. The views expressed in this article do not necessarily reflect those of the cradle. I think it's super funny that late message, because in the end, why they are publishing, isn't it, if they are not representing Anyway, June 7, home Russia and former Soviet Union, 2024. Russia not even thinking of using nuclear weapons, Putin. Moscow has never said it is ready to push the red button, the president has said. Russian President Vladimir Putin speaks during a plenary session of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, Russia. The photo is from Sputnik. Moscow has never been the first to resort to aggressive nuclear rhetoric, President Vladimir Putin told a question and answer panel at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum (SPF) on Friday. The nation's nuclear doctrine only allows the use of atomic weapons in exceptional cases, and the current situation is not one, he added. When asked whether Russia should climb the nuclear escalation ladder faster, Putin replied that Moscow has never initiated such escalation. Russia has never said it was ready to push the red button, the president stated, adding that Moscow has always called on other nations to treat such issues seriously, but was instead accused of nuclear saber rattling. We are not brandishing nuclear weapons, Putin said. Russia's nuclear doctrine clearly states that atomic weapons can only be used if in the face of a threat to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country, the president stated. I do not believe that it is the case now. He warned, however, that changes to the doctrine are not ruled out. The president expressed hope that it will never come to a nuclear exchange between Moscow and the West. He said Russia possesses an effective early warning system and a vast nuclear arsenal, including tactical nuclear weapons, which are 3 or 4 times more powerful than the bombs dropped by the US on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The US lacks both, and only the US has comparable capacity, he added. Moscow has no reasons to to even think about using nuclear weapons, according to Putin. Russia vastly outguns its enemy when it comes to tanks and aviation, the president said. Ammunition production in Russia has also increased by a multiple of 20 amid the ongoing conflict, he added. Putin then called on Russian officials to not even touch upon the subject of nuclear weapons unless absolutely necessary. And that's it. June 7, 2024, Home World News. US chief sounds unclear warn alarm. What? Antonio Guterres has warned that the risk of a catastrophic conflict is at the highest level since the USSR collapse. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaks at an environmental event on Wednesday in New York. Technological advances and escalating geopolitical tensions are imperiling the global population with the highest risk of a nuclear conflict since the Soviet Union breakup in 1991. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned humanity is on a knife edge, Guterres said in a recorded speech presented on Friday at the annual Arms Control Association meeting in Washington. The risk of a nuclear weapon being used has reached heights not seen since the Cold War. The UN chief claimed that countries are engaged in a qualitative arms race, employing such technologies as artificial intelligence (AI) to boost their readiness for a potential conflict. Such advances are multiplying the danger of a nuclear weapons being used, he added. And the last remaining arms control agreement between the US and Russia is heading toward expiration in 2026. Guterres made his comments as US support for Ukraine is in its battle when Russia strokes fears on a wider and potentially nuclear conflict. The US and other NATO members have accused Moscow of nuclear saber-rattling, while Russian leaders have pointed out that deepening Western involvement in the Ukraine conflict could trigger an escalation. We are not brandishing nuclear weapons. I don't understood this word. We are not brandishing like brand. Russian President Vladimir Putin told an audience at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum on Friday. He reiterated that Russia will only consider using nuclear weapons in the event that its sovereignty or territorial integrity were under threat, and added, I do not believe that is the case now, while Putin insisted that Moscow has never been forced to use aggressive nuclear rhetoric. Guterres suggested otherwise. Nuclear blackmail has re-emerged with some recklessly threatening nuclear catastrophe. Nuclear armed states must lead the way in forging new non-proliferation commitments, the Secretary General said. He called for a reaffirmation of a nuclear test moratorium, a pledge not to launch a first strike, and for the groundwork to be laid for a successor to the New START agreement. in capital letters. New START agreement before it expires. The major powers also must address the threat of AI by agreeing that any launch decision any launch decisions are made by humans, not machines or algorithms. In 2022, US President Joe Biden approved a new national defense posture that leaves the door open to a possible nuclear first strike by Washington. He broke a pledge made during his 2020 presidential campaign to narrow the potential uses of America's nuclear arsenal, instead doing the opposite. China has called for a no first use treaty and has ruled it out, launching a first strike. US officials responded by questioning Beijing's sincerity, given the alleged build-up of its nuclear weapons program. Moscow has suspended its participation in the new START Accord, citing US statements on bringing about the strategic defeat of Russia by arming Ukraine. June 7th, Homeworld News. Danish Prime Minister attacked and beaten. A male suspect has been arrested for assaulting Denmark's liberal leader. She is Mette Frederiksen, addresses the 7th annual Copenhagen Democracy Summit in Copenhagen, Denmark. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen was assaulted on a public square in Copenhagen on Friday. Police have arrested a male suspect, and Frederiksen is not believed to be seriously injured. Well, I don't care much about this news. I told you she's not ugly. She's not so ugly. Look. Anyway, but I don't care. June 7, Russia's role in a multipolar world. Putin's address to SPF plenary session. Moscow is open to working with all interested parties as the global economy enters an era of drastic changes, the Russian president has said. Russian President Vladimir Putin speaks during a plenary session of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, Russia. The photograph. The Russian economy has demonstrated growth rates exceeding the world average and is actively adapting to a new emerging multipolar world built on mutual respect, President Vladimir Putin has stated in his address to the plenary session of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum (SPF) on Friday.